Hello. I don't have a handout because frankly I know you're just going to throw it away and I don't really want to waste the paper, so pay close attention because I'm only going to say this as many times as you care to replay it. I'm going to discuss chapters 21 and 22 of the book of Job, which describe the prosperity and fate of the wicked. So far, the dialogues between Job and his friends have moved forward in a fairly structured manner. In the first cycle of conversation, the friends spoke about general concepts without directly applying them to Job. In the second, they explicitly accuse him of being a sinner and use that as means of explaining why his suffering is so great. Naturally, Job refuses to admit that he is guilty and deserving of punishment, so the conversation halts. This barrier becomes symbolically clear in the third cycle when the structure of conversation breaks down. After this, only Eliphaz's speech are correctly and consistently structured. Chapters 21 and 22 conclude the second dialogue cycle and commence the third cycle, respectively. In this period of transition, the structure begins to disintegrate and patterns become irregular. For example, chapter 21 is the first of Job's speeches which is directed solely at his friends. All the other ones shift the audience to God. With this extended attention paid to his friends, he alludes more to their speeches here than he had before. To illustrate, through a somewhat slanted application, imagine a mother trying to have a conversation with her friend while her young son is jumping up and down at her feet trying to get attention. For a while, she might just pat him on the head and smile and then go back to her conversation. When he just doesn't stop, she'll finally break off the conversation and talk to him directly, essentially telling him that his social judgment has failed and that he is drawing incorrect conclusions. This is what Job does in chapter 21, albeit perhaps with less of an emotional outburst. In chapter 20, Zophar had explained that the wicked would suffer for their sins both presently and retroactively through their children. Here Job sits Zophar down and explains exactly why he's full of shit. Verses 7 through 16 are an exploration of how the wicked and their children prosper. Why do the wicked live on, reach old age, and grow mighty in power? Their children are established in their presence and their offspring before their eyes. And then, they spend their days in prosperity, and in peace they go down to Sheol. Subsequently, Job offers that the wicked should view their destruction with their own eyes, and to see the effects and the consequences of their sins on their own children. Regardless, an innocent person dies having never known happiness, and they lie down alike in the dust, and the worms cover them both. In chapter this many, Eliphaz counters Job by rejecting the idea of the wicked prospering. He opens up the chapter by asking Job whether his question should be at all relevant to the lofty Almighty. This echoes a sentiment that is expressed in chapter 21 when Job asks, "Will any teach God knowledge, seeing that he judges those that are on high?" The conclusion that will be drawn then is that humans are meaningless next to the divine, and that even Job, who considers himself righteous, has sinned by nature of being a human who cannot solve all the world's problems. Eliphaz ends the chapter with a call for Job to repent his sins. He says if you treat gold like dust and the gold of Ophir like the stones of a riverbed, and if the Almighty is your gold and precious silver, then you will delight in the Almighty. Appropriately, it turns out that Eliphaz's name means "my God is fine gold." We want to give good advice. We want to be helpful. We tend towards compliance. In chapter 21, Job reminds us of how important the simple act of listening is. Whenever we find ourselves in a situation in which we ought to be giving some gem of insight turned into experience, but can't come up with any, we often feel that just listening would be too worthless without giving our 2 cents. In some cases, however, it may or may not be better than condemning your friend for implied wrongs that may or may not have actually occurred. In defending God, Eliphaz condemns other human beings. He fails to understand that by denouncing Job, he is likewise denouncing that which created Job, which was... Oh yeah, God. Who comes down later to smack some sense into them and explain how insignificant they really are. Think back to the mother and her son. This time, God is the mother leaning down to tell her son to shut up and eat some cookies.